In the middle of a stormy night, a group of pilgrims huddled together, their torches flickering in the wind. They stood at the foot of Mont Saint-Michel, a towering abbey that seemed to touch the sky. The year was 1580, and France was torn apart by religious war. Protestants and Catholics were fighting not just for land and power, but for the very soul of the nation. These pilgrims, despite the danger, were determined to reach the sacred site and seek the blessings of Saint Michael, the archangel who was said to protect the faithful. Michel de Montaigne, a famous writer and thinker of the time, had his own reasons for embarking on such a journey. He was a Catholic, but he lived in a world where being a Catholic could mean being a target. Montaigne had seen too much bloodshed, too many friends and family torn apart by religious differences. He believed that his faith, passed down from his ancestors, was enough to guide him through the chaos. So he set out on a pilgrimage to Rome, a journey that would take him to the heart of the Catholic world. Montaigne's journey was not just a physical one, it was a journey of the soul. He visited Rome, where he collected indulgences and blessed medallions, and then went to Loreto, where he took Easter Communion and left a silver plaque to the Virgin Mary. These acts were more than just rituals. They were a way of affirming his faith in a world that was trying to tear it apart. But Montaigne was not alone. Across France, ordinary Catholics were finding ways to hold onto their beliefs in the face of relentless conflict. The religious wars of the 16th and 17th centuries were not just battles between armies. They were battles for the hearts and minds of the people. Catholics and Protestants were fighting over the meaning of salvation, the role of the Church, and the power of faith. For many, pilgrimage became a way to fight back. It was a way to show that their faith was strong, that it could withstand the attacks of heresy and violence. Shrines like Mont Saint-Michel and Santiago de Compostela, which had been centers of pilgrimage for centuries, became symbols of resistance. Catholics traveled long distances to visit these sites to pray, to seek healing, and to find a sense of community in a world that was falling apart. The religious conflicts of the time also led to changes in the way people practiced their faith. The Council of Trent, a major meeting of the Catholic Church, confirmed the importance of saints and their relics. This was a direct response to the Protestant rejection of such practices. The Church encouraged people to visit shrines, to participate in processions, and to join confraternities, groups of laypeople who worked together to promote their faith. But the conflicts also brought new challenges. Protestant reformers like Martin Luther and Jean Calvin criticized pilgrimage, arguing that it was superstitious and unnecessary. They believed that true faith could be found in the Word of God, not in the physical act of traveling to a holy site. This led to attacks on shrines and the destruction of sacred objects. In France, the Huguenots, French Protestants, systematically targeted Catholic sites, damaging or destroying many of them. Despite these challenges, pilgrimage began to revive in the mid-1570s. People started traveling to shrines again, but the nature of pilgrimage had changed. There was a greater emphasis on local shrines, and on the idea of an interior pilgrimage, a spiritual journey that could be made without leaving home. The new religious orders, like the Jesuits and Capuchins, played a significant role in this revival, using shrines as part of their mission to spread the faith. The motives of pilgrims also changed. While many still sought cures or fulfilled vows, others were driven by a desire to repudiate heresy and to reaffirm the dominance of Catholic communities. Sacred space, which had always been important in Catholicism, became a battleground. Catholics rebuilt and embellished shrines, restored and defended cults, and revived the landscapes of sacrality that had been under attack. In the end, the pilgrims who traveled to Mont Saint-Michel and other shrines were not just seeking personal salvation. They were part of a larger movement to reclaim the sacred, to rebuild the Church, and to affirm their identity as Catholics in a world that was trying to tear them apart. Their journeys were acts of defiance, of hope, and of faith. During the tumultuous period of the Counter-Reformation, the revival of pilgrimage in Europe was not just a spiritual journey, but a bold statement of Catholic faith. This resurgence was especially strong in France, where religious conflicts between Catholics and Protestants, also known as Huguenots, had been raging since the 1550s. Pilgrimage became a way for Catholics to reaffirm their beliefs and combat the spread of Protestantism, which criticized the veneration of saints and the concept of sacred spaces. One of the most significant examples of this revival is the sanctuary of Notre Dame de Lys in Champagne. This shrine, known for its miraculous statue of the Virgin Mary, became a focal point for Catholics who sought divine intervention against Protestantism. In 1568, the shrine was attacked by the troops of the Prince of Orange, but the statue had been safely hidden. This event only strengthened the resolve of the faithful, and the shrine soon attracted more pilgrims and donations to rebuild and fortify it as a symbol of Catholic resistance. Long-distance pilgrimages also experienced a resurgence. In 1578, Claude Hatton, a priest from Provence, noted the renewed interest in the pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela, a famous shrine in Spain. The Guild of St. James in Provence was re-established to support pilgrims making the journey, emphasizing the importance of these long pilgrimages as acts of faith and penance. Another notable site of pilgrimage was Mont Saint-Michel in Normandy. This iconic abbey, perched on a rocky island, was a bastion of Catholicism during the religious wars. The shrine's association with Saint Michael, the archangel who battles evil, made it a powerful symbol in the fight against heresy. The Mont's monks capitalized on this by promoting the site as a place of personal and collective struggle against Calvinism. The abbey successfully repelled several Huguenot attacks, and these victories were attributed to the intercession of Saint Michael. In 1604, a pamphlet written by the Franciscan Francois Feuardent encouraged pilgrims to visit the Mont, using miracle stories to counter Protestant criticisms of the shrine. The Mont Saint-Michel was not just a place of spiritual solace, but also a military stronghold. In 1577, a group of Protestant soldiers disguised as pilgrims attempted to seize the Mont, but were repelled. In 1591, another attack was launched on St. Michael's feast day, but was again defeated. These incidents reinforced the Mont's reputation as a sacred and defended space. In 1628, during the siege of La Rochelle, Bishop Francois de Péricard of Avranches visited the Mont to pray for the success of the Catholic forces. After the siege, he returned to the abbey to celebrate a Mass of Thanksgiving. Pilgrimage was not only a personal act of faith, but also a communal one. In 1602, 800 people from the town of Vire near St. Lo traveled to the Mont to give thanks for the triumph of Catholicism over Protestantism. The presence of Protestant communities in Normandy made visits to the Mont a clear statement of Catholic orthodoxy. Major shrines like the Mont were also places where Protestants could convert to Catholicism. In 1597, a man from Geneva traveled to the shrine of Notre Dame de Paix to renounce Protestantism, confess his sins, and vow to undertake the pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela. Many converts passed through the pilgrim hostel in Bordeaux in the mid-17th century, seeking to atone for their past beliefs. The devotional activities at these shrines changed over time, reflecting broader shifts in Catholic tradition. Even before the Reformation, some reformers like Erasmus called for more restraint in the veneration of saints and relics. However, Protestant attacks on these practices only intensified their importance to Catholics. Miracles associated with saints became a powerful tool for defending the faith. At the Mont Saint-Michel, Francois Feuardent recounted several miracle stories, asserting that they were evidence of God's support for the just. Over the later 16th and early 17th centuries, there was a shift in the focus of devotional practices. While the veneration of saints and relics remained important, there was a growing emphasis on the Eucharist. The Council of Trent, which met from 1545 to 1563, affirmed the doctrine of the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist and emphasized its central role in Catholic worship. This led to a significant increase in Eucharistic devotions, such as the Oratoire, where the Holy Sacrament and relics were displayed for a week at a time. At Mont Saint-Michel, this shift was evident in the changes to the abbey's resources and priorities. In the Middle Ages, much investment went into luxurious reliquaries to house relics. However, in the Counter-Reformation, more attention was given to the embellishment of altars and liturgical vessels. The nave of the Abbey Church was completely rebuilt in 1644, with a focus on creating a more solemn and theatrical space for worship. New liturgical vessels, such as chalices and monstrances, were commissioned to enhance the celebration of the Mass. Pilgrims visiting the Mont in the 17th century were encouraged to participate in confession and receive the Eucharist as the most important activities of their journey. Devotional writers emphasized the importance of these acts, and many pilgrims followed this advice. For example, in 1622, a group from Nantes arrived at the Mont early in the morning, went straight to Mass, and then visited the main sites and souvenir shops. The emphasis on the Eucharist and the physical transformation of shrines like Mont Saint-Michel helped to strengthen Catholic identity and authority. These changes reflected the growing importance of the Eucharist as the touchstone of Catholic orthodoxy and the role of pilgrimage in the spiritual and communal life of Catholics. The conflict with Protestantism not only fortified the faith of the pilgrims, but also transformed the very nature of pilgrimage, making it a powerful tool in the Counter-Reformation's efforts to reassert the authority and sacredness of the Catholic Church. In the late 1500s and early 1600s, a major conflict arose between Catholicism and Protestantism. This conflict had a significant impact on the nature of Catholicism, especially in Europe. One of the key outcomes of this conflict was the enhancement of the Pope's spiritual authority. The Catholic Church, in response to the challenges posed by Protestants, worked to strengthen its core beliefs and practices. The Council of Trent, which took place from 1545 to 1563, was a crucial event in this process. The Council issued a series of decrees that aimed to clarify and reinforce Catholic doctrine. One of the most important aspects of these decrees was the emphasis on the Eucharist, or Holy Communion, as the central act of Catholic worship. This was a direct response to Protestant criticisms, which often questioned the Catholic understanding of the Eucharist. Another significant outcome of the Council of Trent was the standardization of the Roman liturgy, or the way Mass was celebrated. Before 1570, different regions and religious orders had their own unique ways of conducting Mass. For example, the Abbey of Mont Saint-Michel in France used the Benedictine liturgy, while the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela in Spain had its own local liturgy. However, after the Council of Trent, the Roman liturgy became the standard across Europe. This change was not always easy, as it often meant giving up long-held traditions, but it was seen as a way to unify the Catholic Church and strengthen its authority. Another important aspect of the Catholic Church's response was the increased use of indulgences. Indulgences were special pardons that could reduce the time someone had to spend in purgatory, a place where souls were purified before entering heaven. In the Middle Ages, indulgences were widely used and often criticized by Protestants. However, after the Council of Trent, the Catholic Church made a conscious effort to promote indulgences as a way to counter Protestant beliefs. The idea was that by seeking indulgences, Catholics were showing their commitment to the Church and its teachings. For example, at the Abbey of Mont Saint-Michel, the monks established a new confraternity, a religious group dedicated to the Rosary in 1624. Members of this confraternity could earn indulgences by attending special masses and prayers. Additionally, the abbey began to offer plenary indulgences, complete forgiveness of sins, on important feast days, such as those dedicated to the Archangel Michael. The conflict between Catholicism and Protestantism also led to a revival of pilgrimage. Pilgrimage, or the act of traveling to a holy site, had been a part of Christian tradition for centuries. However, it had declined during the Middle Ages. In the late 1500s and early 1600s, pilgrimage began to regain popularity. People felt a strong desire to demonstrate their faith and counter the challenges posed by Protestants. The most prestigious pilgrimage of this time was the Roman Jubilee, which took place every 25 years. During the Jubilee, hundreds of thousands of pilgrims would travel to Rome to receive special indulgences. The experience of pilgrimage was not just a personal one. It also had a collective aspect. Pilgrims often traveled in groups and shared their experiences with others when they returned home. This helped to spread the new devotional practices and strengthen the Catholic faith in local communities. The changes in the Catholic Church, such as the standardization of the liturgy and the increased use of indulgences, had a significant impact on local religion. For example, when Bishop Sebastian Rozmadek of Vannes wanted to revive the shrine of St. Vincent Fur in the 1630s, he created a new confraternity and sought indulgences from the Pope. This not only helped to revitalize the shrine, but also strengthened the connection between the local church and the papacy in Rome. Over time, the focus of Catholicism began to shift. In the early 1600s, the emphasis was on countering Protestant heresy and demonstrating Catholic faith through public acts like pilgrimage. However, by the 1630s, there was a move towards encouraging interior devotions and a reformation of personal life. This spiritual shift did not mean that Catholics stopped opposing Protestant beliefs, but it did reflect a growing emphasis on personal piety and moral living. For instance, in the early 1670s, the Italian priest Domenico Laffi traveled to the shrine of Santiago de Compostela. Along the way, he made personal statements against heresy, such as saying Mass in a Catholic church in Montpellier, after being initially denied entry by a Protestant gatekeeper. These actions were symbolic of the ongoing struggle between Catholicism and Protestantism, but they also reflected the personal commitment of individual Catholics to their faith. The revival of pilgrimage was not just a top-down movement led by the church hierarchy. It was also a grassroots movement driven by the lay faithful. Ordinary Catholics, inspired by the changes in the church and the challenges of the time, took it upon themselves to travel to holy sites, join confraternities, and participate in new devotional practices. This movement helped to create a new image of the conscious Catholic, who was actively engaged in their faith and willing to defend it. The conflict between Catholicism and Protestantism also contributed to the development of a new Catholic identity. By the early 1580s, Catholics began to describe themselves as Roman Catholics in official documents, emphasizing their connection to the Pope in Rome. This was a significant change, as it reflected a growing sense of unity and authority within the Catholic Church. Pilgrimage played a crucial role in this process. The act of traveling to a distant shrine, often in the face of opposition, was a powerful way for Catholics to demonstrate their faith and solidarity with the Church. It was a tangible expression of their commitment to Catholicism, and it helped to reinforce the idea of a unified Catholic community. The conflict between Catholicism and Protestantism in the late 1500s and early 1600s had a profound impact on the Catholic Church and its practices. The enhancement of papal authority, the standardization of the Roman liturgy, the increased use of indulgences, and the revival of pilgrimage were all part of a broader effort to strengthen the Catholic faith and counter Protestant challenges. These changes were not just top-down initiatives, but were also driven by the lay faithful, who played a crucial role in shaping the new devotional practices and Catholic identity of the time. In the 1580s, England was a place where people were learning to see themselves as part of a larger group, a nation. This feeling of belonging was partly shaped by the way people thought about their neighbors, especially the Spanish. The Spanish were seen as the other, and this helped the English define who they were. When Queen Elizabeth I came to the throne in 1558, she faced a country divided by religion. To bring people together, she made attendance at Protestant church services mandatory and banned all Catholic practices. Over time, this created a common Protestant culture, but not everyone was truly convinced. Many people still had Catholic beliefs, but they went along with the new rules to avoid trouble. During this time, the Spanish were seen as the leaders of the Catholic world. They had a large empire and were known for their strong faith. However, in England, people started to see the Spanish as a threat, not just because of their religion, but also because of their actions. One of the most influential books that shaped how the English saw the Spanish was The Spanish Colony, a translation of Bartolomé de las Casas' work. Las Casas, a Spanish priest, described the brutal treatment of Native Americans by the Spanish colonizers. This book painted the Spanish as cruel and barbarous, and it was used to make the English feel superior and more civilized. The idea of the other is important here. When people see others as different or bad, it helps them feel more connected to their own group. In the 1580s, the English used the Spanish as the other to build a sense of national identity. They saw themselves as brave and righteous, while the Spanish were seen as cruel and deceitful. This idea of the other is not just about religion, it's also about politics. The Spanish had a large empire, and the English were worried about the threat of Spanish invasion. The Spanish Armada, a massive fleet of ships, was sent to attack England in 1588, but it was defeated. This victory made the English feel even more proud and united. To understand how this sense of national identity developed, we need to look at what a nation is. A nation is more than just a country with a government. It's a group of people who share a common culture, history, and sense of belonging. In the 1580s, the English were starting to see themselves as a nation, not just subjects of a queen. This was partly because of the threat from Spain, which gave the English a common enemy. The spread of printed materials like pamphlets played a big role in this. These pamphlets were cheap and easy to read, so more people could access them. They often contained stories and ideas that reinforced the idea of the Spanish as the enemy. For example, they described the Spanish as brutal and the English as brave. This helped create a shared sense of identity among the English people. Even though many people still had Catholic beliefs, the Protestant culture was becoming more widespread. The pamphlets and other printed materials helped spread these ideas and made people feel more connected to each other. This sense of connection was important for the development of a national identity. The idea of a nation is not just about feeling connected to other people, it's also about feeling special and unique. The English believed they were chosen by God to be a great nation, and this belief was reinforced by their victory over the Spanish Armada. This victory showed that God was on their side, which made them feel even more special. In the 1580s, the English were starting to think about their place in the world. They saw themselves as a nation that was different from others, especially the Spanish. This sense of national identity was important for the future, as it laid the foundation for England's own colonial ambitions. The English began to see themselves as a nation that could compete with and even surpass other European powers, including Spain. By using the Spanish as the other, the English were able to define who they were and what they stood for. This helped create a strong sense of national identity, which was crucial for the development of England as a nation. As the 1580s unfolded, the struggle between England and Spain became more intense. The English, worried about the spread of Catholicism and the powerful Spanish threat, turned to printed pamphlets to rally the people. These pamphlets played a crucial role in shaping the national consciousness, helping to forge a sense of English identity that was both anti-Catholic and anti-Spanish. In 1581, Parliament raised the fines for not attending Protestant church services from 12d to a staggering £20. This harsh penalty showed that many people were still practicing Catholicism in secret. The government and religious leaders like William Chark worked to combat this by publishing pamphlets that attacked Catholic beliefs. Chark's answer to a seditious pamphlet and Meredith Hanmer's The Great Brag and Challenge of M. Champion, a Jesuit, were just a few examples. These pamphlets were often short and cheap, making them accessible to a wide audience. Even though Chark's pamphlet was longer and more expensive, its popularity led to a second edition, showing how deeply the fear of Catholicism had gripped the nation. However, the pamphlets were not just about religious conflict. They also played a role in building a sense of national identity. In 1583, a translation of The Spanish Colony by Bartolomé de las Casas was published in England. This book, which described the brutal actions of Spanish conquistadors in the Americas, was a powerful tool. The original text had been about the mistreatment of indigenous people by Christian Europeans, but the translator, Jacques de Migraud, changed the focus to specifically target the Spanish. By replacing Christians with Spaniards, Migraud turned the text into a rallying cry against Spain, a common enemy for the English and other European Protestants. The timing of this publication was significant. Spain's annexation of Portugal in 1580 and the conquest of Terceira in 1583 made Spain an even greater threat. The Spanish navy, now bolstered by the Portuguese fleet, could potentially launch an attack on England. The publication of The Spanish Colony helped to heighten the fear of this threat and reinforce the idea that the Spanish were brutal and untrustworthy. Shorter pamphlets like The Primrose of London and A True Report of the General Embarrassment of all the English ships further fueled this sentiment. These texts told stories of brave English sailors who outsmarted and defeated the Spanish, often with the help of divine providence. The woodcuts on the title pages, showing ships flying the English flag, made these stories accessible to people who couldn't read. The message was clear: the English were righteous and valiant, while the Spanish were deceitful and cruel. The impact of these pamphlets was significant. They helped to create a shared sense of English identity that was defined in opposition to the Spanish. This identity was not just about religion, but also about a collective sense of national pride and unity. As the decade progressed, the threat from Spain continued to grow, and the pamphlets became even more important in rallying the people. By the end of the 1580s, the English were more united than ever, ready to face the challenges that lay ahead. In the end, the pamphlets of the 1580s played a crucial role in shaping the English national consciousness. They helped to define what it meant to be English, not just in terms of religion, but also in terms of a shared sense of purpose and identity. As the Spanish threat loomed large, the English people found strength in their shared beliefs and a common enemy, laying the foundation for the nation that would emerge in the centuries to come.